Millionaire shocked to see his ex-wife and triplets on the street, unaware they're his kids. The blizzard that descended on Chicago that night felt like a warning from the heavens, a coldness that seeped into every alley, every gust of wind, every quiet thought. Elias Carter left the aerospace gala earlier than planned. He had smiled, shaken hands, accepted praises about orbital flights, groundbreaking engines, and the future he once believed he was building. But all of it echoed hollow inside his chest. Outside the hotel, the wind cut through his coat like tiny blades. Snow fell so heavily the streetlights blurred into soft yellow halos. Elias climbed into his SUV, turned off all notifications, and let the silence swallow him whole. He just needed to breathe, needed to escape that glittering world for a moment. The lakeside road was buried in white, nearly empty, and that was when he saw them. 4 figures curled up beside the shuttered entrance of a tiny pharmacy. 3 children huddled under a blanket so thin it looked like paper. And the woman? She wrapped her arms around them, shoulders trembling under the brutal wind. Elias slowed. His heartbeat jumped, not from the cold, but from instinct. Something familiar tugged at him, something like a memory resurfacing through the storm. He stepped out of the car, the icy air slamming into his face, but his eyes stayed locked onto her. "Do you need help?" he asked, voice low but steady. The woman lifted her head, and Elias nearly lost his breath. Riley. Riley Carter, the woman he had once loved, once married, once lost. Her face was thinner, paler, her eyes dim with exhaustion. She stared at him like he was a ghost she'd tried for years to forget. "Elias," she whispered, disbelief cracking through her voice. The children looked up too, and in that suspended second, the world stood still. Their eyes, those eyes, matched his perfectly. Deep brown, the tiny dimple, the gentle curve of the brow. His chest tightened. A strange ache, sharp, hot, shot up his spine. Riley pulled the blanket tighter, shielding the children. "Don't come closer. We don't need anything from you. Just go." "Riley, it's -20 out here. They're freezing." His tone softened into something close to pleading. Jonah erupted into a rough, dry cough, so harsh it cut through the wind. Riley tried to muffle it with her hand, but her fingers trembled uncontrollably. Elias took one step, then another. "Get in the car. At least let them warm up." Riley hesitated. He knew her pride well, too well. But the wind howled, Mila whimpered softly, and Jace buried his face into her shoulder. She closed her eyes. A broken exhale escaped her lips. "Fine. Just for tonight." Elias slipped off his coat and wrapped it around the coughing boy. The gesture stunned Riley, as if she glimpsed a part of him she thought had died long ago. He opened the SUV door, lifted the children inside, cranked the heat to full. When he shut the door, his gaze found hers. Snow clung to her hair, her cheeks flushed red from the cold. But what struck him hardest was the quiet desperation in her eyes, the kind you cannot hide even when you try. Elias swallowed against the tightness in his throat. 7 years of silence. And now? She stood before him with 3 children who wore his face. The SUV rolled along the lakeside road, wipers fighting the thick curtain of snow clinging to the windshield. Inside, there was only the low hum of the heater and the unsteady breathing of 4 people trying to adjust to an intimacy none of them had prepared for. Riley sat in the back seat, arms wrapped around all 3 children as if someone might rip them away at any moment. Jonah still coughed softly. Mila pressed her cheek against the fogged-up window, and Jace clung to Elias's coat like it was a brand-new safety blanket. Elias watched them through the rearview mirror. His gaze kept drifting back to Riley's face. The features were familiar, but the light in her eyes was different. Gone was the hopeful girl he once knew. In her place stood a woman who had walked through far too many nights alone. "How long have you been out there?" he asked quietly. "Long enough," Riley replied, staring at her hands. "Long enough to know I made a mistake believing in a lot of things." He wanted to ask, "Believing in me?" but swallowed the words. Those questions didn't belong to this night, not while the kids still shivered. The SUV turned into the underground garage of a high-rise along Lake Michigan. From there, the elevator carried them straight up to the top floor, a different world entirely. When the doors slid open, Riley froze. Warm golden light flooded a vast open space. Hardwood floors gleamed. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the frozen expanse of the lake, silver under the stormy sky. Everything was high ceilings, clean lines, minimalist art, beautiful and cold. "Go in," Elias said gently, as if any sudden movement might scare her away. "They need heat." The triplets stepped in first, cautiously. Mila stared up at the crystal chandelier, eyes wide with awe. Jonah tugged on Elias's sleeve. "Is this your house?" he asked. The word "your" landed where Dad should have been. Elias felt the sting but nodded. "Yeah, it's my house." Riley walked in last, like someone stepping onto the surface of another planet. She took in everything: the leather sofas, the massive bookshelf, the fireplace, the abstract painting. And her expression was a mixture of distance and disbelief. From the hallway, an older woman in an apron appeared, still holding a dish towel. "Oh, Mr. Carter, you're—" She stopped when she saw Riley and the kids. "Oh, Ms. Hughes," Elias said quickly. "Could you grab some warm clothes, towels, and something hot for the kids to eat?" "Of course." Her eyes softened as she looked at the children. "Come on, little ones, let's get you warmed up." Mila glanced at Riley for permission. Riley gave her a small nod. "Go ahead, baby. She's going to help you get warm." As the sound of little footsteps faded down the hall, the room suddenly felt too big for just two adults. "We shouldn't be here," Riley said, fingers twisting in the hem of her coat. "Just tell me about a shelter, and we'll go. This is not for us, Elias." He leaned back against the kitchen island, arms crossed loosely. "You say us like you didn't used to. Belong in this world." "This world was never really mine," she shot back, "and it certainly isn't now." The door clicked open behind them. The sharp rhythm of high heels echoed across the hardwood. "Elias, I saw your car in the garage. Why haven't you been answering my—" The voice cut off as Chloe Harrington stepped into the living room. Her blonde curls were perfectly styled, her red coat a bold slash of color against the neutral palette. Her eyes swept the room, landing on Riley, on her messy hair, cheap coat, worn-out shoes, then on the small towels draped over the couch, the tiny wet footprints dotting the floor. "What is this?" Chloe asked, her voice sharp as ice. "Who is she?" Riley straightened, old instinct making her spine lock into place. "I'll go. We were just staying here for a moment." "We?" Chloe narrowed her eyes. "You brought some homeless woman and 3 random kids into your home in the middle of the night, and I'm just supposed to—" "Don't talk about them like that," Riley cut in, eyes flashing. "They're not random." Chloe let out a brittle laugh. "Right, so what are they then? And how exactly were you planning to explain this to your fiancé, Elias?" The word landed like a blow. The air thickened. Elias stepped forward, his voice dropping. "Chloe, this doesn't concern you." "This doesn't—" She gestured wildly at the towels, the shoes. "I spend the day handling rumors about you, about your company, about our future, and then I walk in to find you running a rescue shelter in your living room." "Chloe, that's enough." His jaw tightened. "Riley and the kids are staying here tonight. I said they are staying." Have you completely lost it? Chloe's eyes burned. You know what the press will do with this? Aerospace Golden Boy opens luxury crash pad for street families? Riley bit her lip, staring at the floor. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You're not going anywhere, Elias said, turning to her, his voice firm but gentle. The kids need a bed. I am not putting them back out there. Chloe stared at him like she didn't recognize him anymore. I get it now. I'm just not tragic enough to hold your attention, am I? Chloe? Just her name, but the weight in it was unmistakable. Go home. We'll talk later. She let out a bitter, tear-bright laugh. You're going to regret tonight, Elias Carter? The door slammed. The echo of her heels down the hall sounded like nails driving into an old coffin. In the living room, Riley stood very still, fists clenched in her coat. You didn't have to do that for me, she murmured. I've caused enough damage already. I wasn't defending you, Elias said, still staring at the door. I was defending what's right. He turned back to her, meeting her eyes fully. At least tonight, he said quietly. You don't have to fight alone. Dawn arrived in a muted gray, slipping through the tall windows of the penthouse. The place was so quiet, Elias could hear the soft ticking of the wall clock. He had slept little, if at all, dozing on the sofa, while listening to the breathing of the 3 children resting in the guest room and the faint rustle of Riley turning in her bed. He didn't know why he couldn't stop staring at the door behind which the kids slept. Something warm, almost burning, moved under his skin, a mix of fear and something he didn't dare name. When Riley stepped into the kitchen that morning, hair loosely tied, sweatshirt hanging off her shoulder, she stopped short seeing him at the stove, making hot cocoa. You didn't sleep? She asked quietly. Not really. Elias slid 2 cups toward her. How are the kids? They slept, thanks to this place. It's warm enough. Her voice was rough, but softer than last night. Silence stretched between them until Elias drew a breath. Riley, come to the study for a moment. His tone wasn't loud, but enough to freeze her mid-step. When the study door shut, the silence pressed in. Elias leaned against the desk, hands braced on the wood, breathing as if preparing to open a wound that had never healed. I need to ask you something, he said, voice low and sharp. Are the kids mine? Riley closed her eyes. She knew the question was coming, but hearing it still stung like metal. Elias, her voice broke. I tried to find you. I called. I texted. I sent letters. But you changed your number, your address, your assistant. Everything came back with unable to deliver. Elias frowned, wounded but defensive. You say it like I vanished on purpose. Riley let out a bitter laugh. You vanished perfectly. Enough that the wife carrying your 3 children couldn't find you. Do you remember the night you walked out? You chose work. You chose to leave. And I was pregnant. Alone. That's not fair, he snapped. Not fair? Riley stepped forward, eyes wet. Do you know what it's like raising 3 kids alone? Do you know the fear? Do you know how many times they asked, Where's Daddy? Elias didn't speak. It hit him. Hard, but the one truth gnawing at him clawed its way out. I need to be sure, he said slowly. I want a DNA test. Riley froze, then tears spilled. She nodded, voice raw. Fine, if that's what you need to believe me. This wasn't an argument. It was 2 broken pasts colliding. Darius arrived with a medical team. When Mila saw the needle, she clung to Elias. Does it hurt? She whispered. Elias knelt, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Just a tiny bit. Daddy's right here. The words slipped out so naturally that Riley turned, stunned. Finally, the samples were taken. And then, the wait. Time slowed to something painful. Elias paced by the window. Riley sat stiff on the edge of a chair, twisting a tissue in her hands. His phone buzzed. He froze. "It's here," he whispered. Riley's breath caught. Elias opened the email. His eyes moved over the cold clinical lines. His hand trembled. His breath shattered. "Riley!" His voice cracked. "They're mine." No explosion, just a quiet collapse. Riley covered her mouth, tears shaking her whole body. Every memory, giving birth alone, raising 3 babies in fear, crashed back. Elias gripped the desk to keep from falling. 7 years, he whispered. I missed 7 years. Riley sobbed. Elias stood in front of her, eyes red, as if staring at his entire life and all the guilt inside it. They didn't speak again, just stood there, 2 people too broken to run, too hurt to reach for each other. After the shock of the DNA results settled, Elias and Riley sat across from each other in the living room. The warm yellow light softened their tired faces, but neither could hide from the conversation anymore. Elias rubbed his hands together, searching for words among years of tangled memories. "Riley," he began slowly, "I know I was ambitious. Too ambitious. When the company hit the expansion phase, all I could think about was winning, proving myself. I shut everything else out." Riley pressed her lips together. "I know your ambition. I love that about you, but I hated feeling like I wasn't part of your life anymore. Every night you were in a boardroom, I was home alone, my belly getting bigger. I was so lonely, Elias. Lonely in ways I didn't even understand." Elias lowered his head, voice cracking. "And I didn't realize I was losing my family." Silence rested between them, heavy, painful, filled with the fractured pieces of a marriage neither had fully healed from. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Ms. Hughes went to open it, and a familiar voice echoed inside. "Son, I heard you brought someone home?" Marva Carter, Elias's mother, walked in, snow dusted across her heavy coat. She hadn't even taken her scarf off when the 3 children ran past the hallway. She stared exactly 2 seconds before whipping her head toward Elias. "Dear Lord," Marva whispered, "don't tell me. These are who I think they are." Elias exhaled and nodded. Marva's eyes widened, then she scolded him with the perfect blend of love and furious disappointment. "Elias Carter, you let my 3 grandchildren freeze out there for 7 years? You think God's clapping for you right now?" Elias looked like a child caught stealing cookies. Riley stood quietly as Marva turned to her. "Sweetheart," she said gently, taking Riley's hand. "No mother should raise 3 babies alone. I don't know what happened between you 2, but I know this. Family is a blessing, not a burden, and faith is what keeps us standing when everything else collapses." The words hit Riley straight in the chest, painful but strangely comforting. Later that night, after Marva left and the kids were asleep, Elias leaned against the balcony door while Riley sat on the sofa, hands twisting nervously. He turned back to her. "We need a few boundaries," he said, voice softer than it had been in years. "So we don't misunderstand or hurt each other. I'll take a separate room. You and the kids stay wherever you're comfortable. We'll raise them together, but we won't force anything." Riley lifted her eyes, her voice gentler. "I agree. We do this for the kids first. Everything else comes later." For the first time in years, they didn't talk like enemies, not quite lovers, but 2 broken people learning how to stand, slowly, carefully. The days that followed drifted in softly, yet they shifted Elias's life in ways he never expected. His once silent home, where only the wind outside the glass walls made a sound, now pulsed with a chaos he never knew he longed for. Tiny footsteps pattering across hardwood floors, bright laughter bouncing off the walls, uncertain little voices calling, "Daddy," until the word finally settled naturally. One morning, trying to impress the kids, Elias insisted on making pancakes. 2 minutes in, the pan burned, smoke filled the kitchen, and the fire alarm shrieked like it wanted to escape the ceiling. Mila doubled over laughing, Jonah coughed through giggles, and Jace banged his fork on the table like cheering on a disaster. "Daddy, pancakes aren't supposed to look like coal sculptures," Mila said between breaths. Elias held up the charred pancake, cheeks red, while Riley hid a smile that softened her entire face. Later in the afternoon, he carried all 3 kids around the living room, Jonah on his shoulders, Mila on his back, Jace clinging to his neck while making robot sounds and rocket noises that sent them screaming in delight. Riley stood in the doorway, arms loosely crossed, watching him with a look she couldn't quite hide, warm, hopeful, and afraid of it all. That night, Elias read them a bedtime story. He stumbled over sentences, mispronounced words, but the children leaned into him as if they had known him forever. After they fell asleep, he took Riley up to the rooftop to breathe the cold night air. Below them, the city glowed like an inverted sky. "I want them to have something I never did," Elias said quietly. "A real father." Before Riley could answer, the elevator doors burst open. Chloe stormed out, fury shaking her voice. "Elias Carter, you disappear for 3 days, and now you're up here? Playing family?" Elias didn't hide. He stood tall. "Chloe, what we had was never love. You loved the idea of me, and I tried not to hurt you, but I can't keep pretending." Riley froze. Chloe stared, stunned, before tears spilled and she turned away, disappearing back into the elevator. Silence settled again. Elias looked at Riley. "I want to rebuild things with you. Slowly. No pretty promises, just honesty." Riley held his gaze. "I need consistency, Elias, not words." He nodded. "I know." They stood side by side as the night wind brushed past them, and somewhere beneath the vast Chicago skyline, something small but powerful flickered to life. Not the return of old love, but the possibility of loving right this time. The bad news arrived on a gray morning, right as Elias was tying Jonah's shoelaces. His phone buzzed non-stop before Darius called, sounding so urgent that Elias shot to his feet. "Elias, the company's been hacked. Customer data is leaking everywhere. The whole industry is on fire." Within an hour, everything that once felt solid around Elias began collapsing. News channels plastered red headlines. "Carter Aerospace hit by critical breach. Massive data leak. CEO Elias Carter silent. The biggest aerospace crisis of the decade?" Shareholders panicked. Investors flooded his inbox. The PR team was drowning. Elias slipped into his office before the kids noticed the tension. The door shut behind him, leaving only his ragged breathing and the blue glow of his laptop reflecting off a face drained of color. Emergency meetings stacked on top of each other. Engineers reported deeper breaches than expected. Legal teams warned the fallout could last for years. When the internal investigation report arrived, Elias almost couldn't believe what he read. The unauthorized access trail pointed directly to a user he knew too well, Chloe. Darius confirmed it, his voice lowering. "She retaliated, Elias. After you ended things, she used her old access privileges. No one thought she'd go this far." Elias sank into his chair, hands clasped tightly. He had lost the company he built with his youth, all because of the vengeance of someone he never truly loved. For the first time, he felt genuinely hollow, not from financial ruin, but from the sting of betrayal and disappointment in himself. The door cracked open softly. Riley entered without a word. She placed a hand on his back, warmth settling through his shirt. Just a single touch, but enough to release the tight breath he'd been holding all morning. "Elias," she whispered, "sometimes God clears away the things we cling to the hardest, so we can learn what we refused to face before." He closed his eyes. "I've let too many people down." "No," Riley said with quiet strength. "You haven't lost the most important part, your soul, and it matters more than your success." By evening, Darius arrived and said plainly, "You need to step down as CEO for now. If you don't, the media will destroy both you and the company." Elias stayed silent for a long time. Then he nodded. The next day, under harsh lights and a forest of cameras, Elias announced his temporary resignation. His voice was low but steady, as if he finally aligned with his own truth. Back at the penthouse, the triplets ran to him, wrapping their arms around him. Jonah looked up and asked, "Daddy, are you sad?" Elias knelt, pulling them closer. "Daddy's not sad. Daddy's just learning everything all over again." And in that moment, he understood. Losing everything wasn't the end. It was a reminder, a beginning. "Maybe this fall," Elias whispered, "is my second chance." In the days after Elias stepped down as CEO, the penthouse grew strangely quiet. No more reporters at the door, no more endless meetings, yet his mind still felt trapped inside a blaring alarm. He tried to appear fine for the children, but Riley saw the heaviness in every slow breath, every tired step. One night, after the kids were asleep, Riley said gently, "Elias, you need to talk to someone, a professional. You're carrying too much." He let out a small, broken laugh. "I'm not that weak." Riley shook her head. "It's not weakness, it's healing." Eventually, he agreed to try. Dr. Helen Ward's office sat in an old building, warm light and lavender drifting through the air. She looked at Elias with a calm, non-judgmental gaze that made him breathe easier. "Where would you like to begin?" she asked. He stayed silent for a long moment, then whispered, "I don't know how to stop feeling useless." The first session cracked open doors he had locked for decades. He spoke about the father who left when he was 8, about the void he tried to fill with success. He confessed his deepest fear. "If I'm not at the top, I'm nothing?" Dr. Helen nodded. "That isn't true, but I understand why you believe it." The sessions that followed dug deeper. Elias cried. He raged. Some days he said nothing at all, only stared at the window. But each time he walked out, Riley noticed his shoulders loosen, his eyes soften. One afternoon, Pastor Raymond, an old family friend, stopped by. He didn't come to preach, just to sit, 2 mugs of tea warming the table. "You know," he said quietly, "faith isn't extraordinary strength. It's taking one more step when you think you can't." Elias lowered his head. "I've been far from God for too long. God has never been far from you." A simple line, yet it reached a place even therapy hadn't touched. That night before bed, Elias whispered his first prayer in years. "Help me let go." To his surprise, he slept peacefully. The change didn't arrive loudly. It came in small shifts, Elias laughing more, saying thank you more, sitting beside the kids without guilt for not working. Riley saw every bit of it. One evening, they sat in the kitchen under warm yellow light. "Elias," she said softly, "you're not the man I divorced anymore." He looked at her, eyes deeper and more honest than ever. "I feel that too, and I'm trying to become the man you can trust again." In that moment, healing wasn't some distant promise. It was something blooming right there between them. The changes in Elias didn't just warm the penthouse, they awakened something inside Riley too. She had spent years in the shadows, holding her children through rainy nights under damp awnings, turning away from full shelters, surviving the sting of pity without a single hand truly lifting her up. And now, as she watched Elias heal piece by piece, she realized she carried a fire of her own, a calling. One night after the kids had fallen asleep, she opened the wooden box Marva had left for her a few weeks earlier. Inside lay an old journal, its pages faded. Riley read line after line, Marva writing about faith, compassion, and the women life had crushed, but who kept walking anyway. One passage said, "Women don't need pity. They need opportunity and a safe place to rise." Riley closed the journal, her heart trembling at the clarity of it. The next day, she booked a small conference room and presented her idea to the community outreach team, a project for homeless and single mothers, Haven Circle Foundation. "It's not a place for them to hide," Riley said, "but a place for them to begin again." The idea spread faster than she imagined. Donors called. Organizations wanted to partner. Every few weeks, another center opened. Each opening was emotional, mothers clutching their children, staring at clean beds, warm meals, skill training sessions, as if they'd been handed back their humanity. At every speech, Riley stood on stage with a steady voice and bright eyes, telling a story that sounded like someone else's, but was undeniably her own. She became a symbol of hope, living proof that sometimes failure is merely the hallway before a miracle. Elias backed everything from the shadows, never asking for credit, never attaching his name. He quietly funded programs, called partners, built connections, and stayed out of the spotlight so Riley could shine. And every time she spoke, every time applause shook the room, he looked at her with a growing certainty. He was falling in love with her again, but this time with the woman she had become, not the memory of who she once was. One afternoon, when Riley returned from a trip, the kids stormed into the living room. "Mom!" Mila squealed. "Daddy is preparing something secret," Jace chimed in. "I saw Daddy hide a box in his closet." Jonah nodded vigorously. "And Uncle Darius said Daddy's nervous like a first crush." Riley stood frozen, heartbeat skipping. The kids kept talking, but their voices blurred as a long-dormant feeling began gently waking up inside her. That night, when Elias walked into the kitchen, Riley lifted her head. The warm yellow light wrapped around them, soft and settling, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Their eyes met. No rush, no declaration, just a quiet acknowledgement. Hope, the thing they both once lost, was finding its way back. That night, the main Haven Circle Center was quieter than usual. When Riley walked in after a long meeting, she planned to check a few rooms before heading home. But the moment she opened the community room door, she froze. Warm golden light filled the space, not from overhead bulbs, but from hundreds of small candles lining the walls, their glow dancing across familiar photographs. Pictures she thought Elias had long forgotten, them laughing in the sun, their wedding, the babies when they were first born. Each frame felt like a heartbeat resurrected. She stepped inside, breath trembling. Pink petals covered the floor. Vanilla lingered softly in the air. And right in the center of the room, her 3 children stood in a neat row, each holding a handwritten sign in messy little letters. "Mommy. Please say yes?" Riley nearly melted on the spot. What are you all doing?" she whispered, a teary smile tugging at her lips. Jonah pointed behind her. "Daddy said we should stay here." When she turned, Elias was already there. Wearing a simple white shirt, his hands trembled slightly, but his eyes didn't. They were steadier than she had ever seen them. Not a CEO, not a man trying to be invincible. Just Elias, hers in this moment. She opened her mouth, but he stepped closer and gently took her hand. "Riley," he began, voice deep and honest enough to silence even the candles. "I hurt you. I let ambition pull me so far away, far enough to lose the family I loved most. But you showed me love isn't about winning or control. It's about standing beside someone when they're at their weakest." Her eyes lowered, lashes trembling. "I was wrong," Elias continued, squeezing her hand. "Wrong in countless ways. But if the past is a wound, then the present is my chance to stitch it with everything I have. I'm not asking you to forget, just to let me rebuild. With you, with our kids." Riley's breath hitched when Elias slowly lowered to one knee among the scattered petals. In his hand was a wooden box, not flashy, not expensive, the same handcrafted box he'd made when they were newly married. "Riley Carter," Elias said, his voice thick, "will you be my wife? Again? This time not because of the future I promised, not because of the position I held, but because of real love, and because I will give up anything to protect our family?" A tear slipped down Riley's cheek and landed on his hand. She cried, not from pain, but from the overwhelming and unmistakable feeling of being truly seen again. "Yes," she breathed, shaking. "Yes, Elias, I will." The kids screamed with joy and rushed into their arms. Elias wrapped all four of them in a tight embrace, Riley and their three little miracles, holding them as if letting go might break him. In a room filled with candlelight, laughter, tears, and warmth braided together. And Riley knew it wasn't that Elias had changed. He had finally come home. Trinity Church in Chicago wore a thin veil of snow that morning, like winter itself had chosen to bless the day. The bells chimed softly, not loud or jubilant, but steady, as if announcing something sacred, ready to be rewritten. Elias stood near the stained glass window, inhaling deeply until the cold felt carved into his lungs. Darius fixed his tie and chuckled. "You good?" Elias exhaled shakily. "This time, I know exactly what I'm doing." When the music began, everyone turned. The three children walked in first, tiny bouquets in hand, stepping carefully along the red aisle carpet. Jonah was so serious it made a few guests laugh. Mila scattered flower petals like she was releasing blessings, and Jace kept glancing back to make sure Mommy was still there. Then Riley appeared, wrapped in a simple white dress, veil fluttering like breath. Her eyes met Elias's, and for a moment every old scar softened into warmth. She reached him, her trembling hand fitting perfectly into his. Pastor Raymond smiled, his deep voice echoing through the ancient arches. "Today we witness more than a wedding. We witness a resurrection. Grace is not forgetting the past. It is rebuilding it with love." Riley breathed in, and Elias squeezed her hand in quiet agreement. When it was time for vows, Elias looked into the eyes that had survived every winter with him, even the years he wasn't present. "Riley," he said, voice low like a prayer, "I lost you once because I carried the world before I carried my own heart. I vow from today forward, this family is the first thing I will protect, choose, and nurture, every day without condition." A tear slipped down her cheek. Luminous. Riley spoke next. "Elias, I used to fear that loving you meant breaking. But you've shown me that hearts heal when we're brave enough to open them again. I vow to forgive, to walk beside you, and to build a future with you. Not perfect, but real." Pastor Raymond nodded. "You may seal your promises." Elias whispered, "I'm here, always." Riley answered softly, "And I'm here. I won't run anymore." Their kiss rose under applause that filled the church and under snowflakes drifting gently outside the tall windows. The children leapt with joy, wrapping their arms around their parents as they walked back down the aisle between smiling faces. The church doors swung open. A gust of cold air swept in, carrying pure white snow. The five of them stepped out together, hand in hand, into a new chapter free of fear. And as winter light washed over them, Elias leaned toward Riley and whispered the perfect ending to a storm-torn journey. "Winter brought me home. Love keeps me here forever."